10 ways to make selections in Photoshop. Here we go. Welcome to the Visual Center. I'm Carlos, and in this video, I'm going to talk about 10 different ways to make selections in Photoshop. Like a lot of things in Adobe, there are a lot of different ways to get something done. And there are more than 10 ways to do selections in Photoshop, but these will be the most basic and the most common. Now, if you're new to Photoshop, let's go over some basics. If you're not new, use the table of contents in the description to skip ahead. A selection is a way to isolate an affected area in the image. When a selection is active, whatever you do to make a change will only happen inside the selection. When a selection is made, you'll see dashed lines moving around the edges. These are referred to as marching ants. Here are some common shortcuts you can use when working with selections. To release a selection or to deselect, you can use the keyboard shortcut Command D. To select all, you would use Command A. If you use the keyboard shortcut Command H, you can hide the marching ants, but still keep the area selected. In some operating systems, you'll get this pop-up. We'll just say Hide Extras. Now, if I paint with my paintbrush, you can see the area is still selected. I just no longer have the marching ants. If you want to bring the marching ants back, Command H again. You want to be careful with this one because a lot of times you can forget that you've hidden the selection and you go on to editing other things in the image, but that selection is still active and it could cause problems with your editing process. After you make a selection, you can make adjustments to it by using the Shift key or the Option key, on Windows the Alt key. If you hold down Shift, you can add to the selection. And if you hold down Option, you can subtract from the selection. This allows you to fine-tune your selection to a very specific area. Notice on my cursor that the icon changes if I hold down Option, minus, or if I hold down Shift, plus. This will help you remember which one adds and which one subtracts from the selection. Now, in addition to adjusting your selection, you can also modify it. By default, the selection will have a hard edge, but the edge can be feathered as well. You can do that by going up to Select, Modify, Feather. And then you choose how many pixels you want to feather the selection. If we type in 15 pixels, you'll see that it feathers outside the selected barrier by 15 pixels. Another place you can do that is in the selection tool itself. If you have one of the tools selected, up here in the control panel, you'll have a section that says Feather. I can type this in here and say 20 pixels. Now when I draw the selection, it'll automatically be feathered by 20 pixels. Depending on the effect that you're applying, this can help it blend better with the original image. You can also save selections if you need to select the same area again later on in your editing process. You would do that by going to Select, Save Selection, and then you'll name it. Click OK, and that selection is saved. I can deselect, I can do some editing, and then if I need to select those areas again, I can simply go to Select, Load Selection, and in the channel, I just want to make sure that I select the selection I saved. Eyes. Click OK, and that area gets selected again. Okay, now that we understand some of the basics, let's talk about the 10 ways to make selections in Photoshop. Now this will just be a brief introduction of each of them, but if you want me to go more in depth on one of them, let me know which one in the comments below. The Marquee tool is this tool right here with the dashed lines. If I click and hold on it, I can see that it has multiple versions. You have a rectangular marquee tool, an elliptical marquee tool. You have this single row marquee tool, and this is used for mostly with web design. So if we do the rectangular one, it's a pretty straightforward selection tool. You just click and drag, and you get a rectangular selection. If I hold down Shift, I can add rectangles to it. Okay, if we go to the elliptical marquee tool, you get just that. You get circular selections, and I can hold down Shift and add more circles to my selection. I can also hold down Option or Alt on Windows and remove portions of my selection. You can use this tool to create very basic shapes if you're just selecting something that has a very basic shape to it. If I zoom in here, I can use it to select the eyes. Now sometimes getting the selection in just the right place that you want it can be a little bit tricky. So let me teach you a little trick that quite often blows the mind of some of my students. While you're making the selection, if it's not in the place that you want it to be, all you need to do is, while you're holding down with the mouse, also hold down the space bar, and it'll stop growing the selection and allow you to move it around. So now I can move it into place. And if I let go of the space bar, I can continue to reshape it. And that allows me to get just where I want it. Let me do that again. I'll hold down Shift to create another selection for the other eye. This one's a little off, so hold down spacebar, scoot that over, let go of spacebar, continue to shape. And there, that saved me some time and allowed me to get the selection right in the area that I wanted. The lasso tool is this one right here. And this one allows you to make custom shape selections. So if I select the lasso tool, I can simply draw with my mouse a line around the area that I want to select. Now, a lot of mistakes that I see people make is they try to take their time and go really slow at making these selections, but just keep in mind that you can always adjust the selection afterwards and add to it, subtract from it, change the edge. And so if you want to save time and make things go faster, make a really quick selection and then adjust it as you go. Kind of like this. I'm just going to make a quick selection around the eye and not worry about being too perfect, because I can always come in. If I missed part of it here, I can hold down Shift and I can just grab that part again, and I can come in here. And it's always easy to make really quick adjustments. A lot easier than if I was going really, really slow, making sure I was just perfect. This also hurts your hand after a while too. So it's a lot better if you can just go really fast, and then you can make your adjustments. Hold down Shift to grab this area. Maybe I don't want that red area, so I'll hold down Option. Hold down Shift. Let's fix this area. There, and that's the lasso tool. It helps you create custom shaped selections and select a very specific area. Now inside the lasso tool is another tool called the Polygonal Lasso Tool. And this one also allows you to create custom shapes, but it creates straight lines. So you have something with a straight edge in your image and you want to select it, all you need to do is click once, and that drops a point, and that allows you to draw a straight line, and you get this little preview of where that line is going to be. So I can click again, and click again. Whoops, I lost my selection there. Okay, click here, click once. Now to close the selection, there's a couple things you can do. You can double click, and that'll automatically connect that last line. Or we click here, here, and here, when we go back to that original point, you'll see the cursor change with a little circle attached to it. That's telling you that it's going to close the selection. If you select it, you get the marching ants. Now, another tool that's good for speeding up the process of making a selection is the Quick Select tool. You'll find that inside this bucket. If you click and hold, then you have the Quick Selection tool. You'll notice that my cursor, if I make this bigger, has a little plus sign in the middle. If I hold down Option, I'll get a minus sign. And the way this works is if you click and drag, as you click and drag, Photoshop is going to look for pixels similar to what you're dragging over and try to jump to the edges of those pixels. Now I don't have to hold down my keyboard shortcut Shift here because the quick selection is an automatic plus, and so anything that I paint over is going to be entered into the selection. Now it does more than what I want. If I scroll over here, you can see it's grabbing too much of the red. Maybe I just wanted this inside here. I can hold down Option on my keyboard and I get a minus inside the cursor, and I can start painting in that area. And so you can go back and forth and really fine-tune this selection. Another way is to make your cursor smaller, and that helps you really fine-tune it. It doesn't match as many pixels. And so you can get to the area that you want. Now the Select Object tool is a really useful tool. If we go back into this bucket, we have the Object Selection tool. Now the way the Select Object tool works is that you draw a selection, click and drag, and Photoshop uses artificial intelligence to guess what you're trying to make a selection of. All I need to do is let go of my mouse, and the selection automatically jumps to what it thinks should be selected. Let me show you that on another image too. Click and drag, release, and it automatically made a selection around his head. Now sometimes these selection tools may not work perfectly, and sometimes you need a really clean and perfect selection. For that, the pen tool can be really precise. Now the way the pen tool works is you click once and it drops an anchor, and then you go to the next point you want to add in your selection and you click again and it drops another anchor point and it draws a path in between them. And then you just go around your object dropping anchor points. Now these are straight lines that I've been doing. You can also do a curved line by click and drag and you get a curved line. And then you can go back to the original, and then this area has a path drawn around it. Now it is a little bit difficult to work this way. When you draw an anchor, you can't exactly see where that path is going to be before you drop the next anchor. Now to make that a little bit easier, what you can do is, let's go up to this gear up here. I'm going to set the thickness to 3 pixels, and I'm going to say rubber band. Now when you do that, after you drop an anchor, it gives you the preview of where that path is going to be, so it's going to help you line it up. So if we do this shape again, we'll drop an anchor here, and then I have that preview, so I can make sure that I'm right in line with that shape before I drop the anchor point. And then click and drag. And then I can see that this curve doesn't quite match up. So when I click on this anchor to close the shape, I'm going to click and drag. That'll allow me to adjust it. Okay. Once you have your path, all you need to do is go up here and say selection, Click OK, and it turns that path into a selection. And that's how you can use the pen tool to get really fine-edged custom selections. Select Subject is another tool that uses artificial intelligence to help you create the selection. And you can actually use it without using any of the tools here in the toolbar. I'm going to stay on the selection tool here. One thing that you do need is the layer needs to be unlocked. It needs to be a floating layer. So you can unlock the layer just by clicking on this little padlock. It becomes layer 0. And then if you go to the properties panel, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see a little button that says select subject. All you got to do is click on that. And that artificial intelligence guesses what you want selected. It didn't do a perfect job. There's a couple of things up here, but we can jump to the Lasso Tool and kind of clean these up. If I hold down Option on my keyboard, I can just select these, remove them from the selection. But if I throw a mask on this, you can see how powerful that tool is. That's a lot of time going in there with the pen tool or the lasso tool, trying to go in there and get all these little details in here, especially in the hair. It actually did a pretty decent job with the hair. So that is the Select Subject tool. Again, not a perfect tool, but it saves a lot of time. So it's a great way to get started, hit the ground running, make a general selection, and just tune it up at the end. The next tool I'm going to show you is called Select and Mask. And this is another tool that is not in the actual toolbar, but you can access it from these tools. So if you just make sure that you're on any of the selection tools like the Lasso Tool or the Marquee Tool, up here in the top control panel, you have this button called Select and Mask. If I click on that, it's going to open up a new window with new tools. These are new selection tools. I have new control panels over here. Now, Select and Mask is an extremely powerful tool, and it's very, very helpful. Saves a lot of time. It can take a lot of time to explain it. I'm not going to go into depth. That's a whole nother video. But I'll just briefly go through some of the features here. The way this works is you have the Quick Select tool up here while you're in Select and Mask. While you paint with that, what becomes selected becomes more solid, less transparent. So as I'm going through, pieces of the photo are becoming more opaque as I make that selection. So that's one way you can visualize the selection you're making in Select and Mask. Another way is if we change the view. Another way I use is called Overlay. So anything that is red is not selected. Anything that is not red is selected. So again, you can use the Quick Select tool, and anything that adds to the selection will lose the red overlay. And if you mess up a part of it, you can always hit Option and you get the little minus key, and you can say remove this from the selection. Now there's a number of other tools here. There's the Refine Edge brush. This one's really good for selecting hair. This tool is the brush tool, and this allows you to customize the selection. So instead of jumping to pixels, you can actually brush in the exact area that you want to be in the selection. There's the Object Selection tool. So just like the other Object Selection tool, you click and drag to add an object to the selection. And it does a really good job at knowing where you want those edges to be. It even has a lasso tool, lots of different settings and stuff over here. Like I said, we can go into a whole nother video just going into the depth of all the tools here. But just know that you have some output settings here, and one of them is output to a selection. So I can click OK, and then everything I did in here becomes the selection. Another way you can make a selection here in Photoshop is something called Select Color Range. And you do that by going through the menu here under Select, down to Color Range. And the way you use this tool is you get this little eyedropper here, and you can select a color in your photo, let's say like this red. And Photoshop will search all the pixels in your image and try to find a similar color. You have a fuzziness slider here. What that does is it increases the range of values related to that pixel that you selected. So these areas are a very bright, vibrant red. If I want to include maybe this darker, duller red, I can increase the range of values that select color range is finding. I can grab this slider and I can move this up and increase that fuzziness, and it adds more pixels to the selection. Another way you can add it is you have additional eyedroppers over here. So I have this one with the plus sign. This is going to add values to my search parameters. So if I could just go to this darker area and just click on that, it then adds that. The fuzziness is so high that it's even grabbing some of these dark tones in the background. So if I bring the fuzziness slider down, I start to get that black back. And I can change some settings in here like the selection preview. I can change it to grayscale so I can see what's going on out here. It's a lot larger than this little one here, so I can see if I'm grabbing too many pixels, and I am getting a lot of pixels here. So maybe I need to bring down the fuzziness to something like that. Once you have the selection fine-tuned, what you can do is click OK. And what this allows you to do is isolate a particular color. This is really good for, changing the color of something. Just really quick, if we throw a hue and saturation on top of this, you can see we can easily change the color of the radio. Now I did this really quick just to illustrate the tool. You would probably go in and clean up the selection so that this little highlight was selected, and back here in the shadow area that was selected as well. But just a really quick way to change the color of a product or clothing or any kind of thing you need to change the color of. So the last method I want to show you is actually more of an advanced selection method. And I know I said I was keeping it basic, but I just wanted to show you this one to show you what's possible with selections and how powerful Photoshop can be to help you get that perfect selection. So as this method is called channel pooling, what we're going to use is the channels panel over here, and we're going to use the separated color channels here to create our selection. So basically what I want to do is I want to change the background of this image. And so I need to select the model and separate them from the background. And so if I go to my channels panel here, if I select red, this is the red channel, green channel, blue channel, and it displays it in black and white so you can see the areas that are affected. What I'm looking for when I'm going through these channels is what gives me the most contrast between the background and the subject. Now here on the red channel, this is probably not the option to go with. The skin tones are very similar to the background, but if I go to green, you can see there's a higher range of contrast there. And if I go to blue, that's even better. The skin tones get much darker and I get a nice clean separation. Now this is just a starting point. What I want to do is actually duplicate this. So I'm going to grab this blue channel down to the plus symbol, which is the new layer. And it's going to create this new channel down here. Now this is what's referred to as an alpha channel. This is a channel that's not really connected to anything. If I go back to RGB, you'll see that it's not active anymore. It's just there to be selected and to create selections. But we do need to modify it because we can't use it just as is. So we need to get rid of all the detail that's in here. So I'm going to start by using a levels. So image adjustment levels. And I'm just going to increase the contrast as much as possible without changing the separation of the background and the subject. So I'm going to bring down my blacks. And I'm just going to keep going until I see some issues, probably about there. I might even back it off a little bit. What I'm seeing is I'm getting really, really close to losing information here. So I'm going to bring those down. I'm going to bring my highlights up, which will make my background brighter. Okay, and by bringing those together, I get this nice clean line all around the subject. Now I do have a lot of white areas in here, and that'll mess up the selection, but it's easily fixed. I can go OK. And I can grab my paint tool and make sure that I'm painting black. I can just fill in this area. And again, you don't have to worry too much because, like I said, this is an alpha channel. I'm not actually painting on the photo itself. I'm painting on this channel, which is going to create a selection for us. And if you go back to RGB, you'll see nothing's really changed. It's only this alpha channel. Okay, I'm actually going to flip this back because I'm looking at this area and it looks like I lost a little bit of his shirt there. So I'm going to paint that back in. And I might have to fine tune that later when we do the actual selection. And basically from this, you can create a selection. All you got to do is hold down the Command key and hover over the little icon in the channels panel here. You'll notice that the cursor changes if you hold down Command. It gets that little selection indicator. If I click on it, anything that's white is going to be selected. Anything that's black is not selected. So now I can go back to my RGB. I can go back to my layers panel. And you can do whatever you need to change the background. You can paint it another color if you want to. Let's change it to like a yellow. That's channel pulling. Like I said, it's an advanced method, but it's really, really powerful and it can be really, really helpful. And there you go. There's 10 ways you can make selections in Photoshop. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a like. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and we'll see you next time.